We've been in an important series on the four horsemen of the American apocalypse and our 6 trials by fire. Over the next 4 weeks, I want to drill down to each of the horsemen with experts who studied the adversary and focused on combating them. First of these 4 dangerous horsemen is color-coded red. Let's call it Code Red. It's communism. More specifically, it's the CCP. To help us better understand the threat, I've invited in a friend, a trusted colleague for the battle to save Western civilization. It's the Honorable Frank Gaffney. Frank is the president of the Institute for the American Future. In addition, he's the host of Securing America. It's a daily program on Real America's Voice Network and a podcast, and he's the driving force behind securingamerica.substack.com, the author of a daily audio and video commentary, The Secure Freedom Minute. And he also serves as the vice chairman of the Committee on the Present Danger, China. And he's the co-founder of the Sovereignty Coalition. In 1987, he was tapped by President Ronald Reagan at the age of 34 to become the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy after 4 years as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Forces and Arms Control Policy. He's been in this fight a long time, and he went on to found and lead for 37 years the Center for Security Policy, championing the GIPR's Peace Through Strength, through a high-impact, low-overhead model that he dubs the Special Forces in the War of Ideas. And now that's at the Institute for the American Future. So I want to welcome the great Frank Gaffney to the Economic War Room.
Thank you. I feel very welcome, and it's always a delight to be with you, especially in the Economic War Room, Kevin.
Yeah, and you're going to hang out with us for a little bit as we're battling together these 4 horsemen. We've got a lot to cover and a little bit of time to do it. I want to ask you just a basic overall question. What would you describe as the China threat? What does that mean?
The worst of the China threat, honestly, is that too many Americans don't even know there is a China threat. If they did know about it, they would know that what compounds our general ignorance of the fact that the Chinese Communist Party has basically from its inception sought the destruction of our country. Because after all, we stand in the way of the realization of their ambitions to rule the world under their Chinese Communist model. But the piece of this that is so important, and frankly, you've taught me about from the beginning, Kevin, is the way in which the Chinese have waged this warfare against us, at least since the early 1990s. They actually acknowledged doing it in 1999 in a book you first introduced me to. Unrestricted Warfare was its title, written by 2 Chinese, at the time, senior People's Liberation Army colonels. They went on to become general officers. And their book has turned out to be a pretty accurate description of the way in which they have used every instrument of power, to this point, short of the explosive kinetic kind, including various means of physical destruction, including, of course, fentanyl, chemical warfare, and COVID, biological warfare. But it's been economic warfare, something you know so well, and your audience does as well. It's been political warfare. It's been cultural warfare, cognitive warfare. The deindustrialization of the United States, the war basically for the minds of our young people using instruments like TikTok. It's, in short, virtually anything you can think of that could be weaponized to destroy another nation without it knowing, better yet, but certainly short of using that kind of traditional, conventional violence. The Chinese Communist Party has used it, and that's why we are in such dire straits, I believe, at the moment, vis-a-vis the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, I'm going to make 3 points from what you just said because I think it's brilliant and it's true. Point number 1, unrestricted warfare. They actually write in there about how they could use Osama bin Laden or George Soros as a type of terrorist to make America down. So they hit the green axis and the blue axis, and then they talk about how they can corrupt politicians. which is the yellow axis, the yellow horsemen, the cowards and traitors. So they mentioned that in there. The second point I want to make is what you just described. I guess we could say, and next week we're going to have Peter McIlvaine talking about the green horse. It's the same thing with Islam. They hide and bide. They pretend that they're not doing this, and then they come in with a destructive ideology. And that's the exact same thing. And the third one that you pointed out is it's largely economic, what they're doing. The Chinese communists have undermined us. Chinese people are phenomenal people, and I don't want to say we're I know a lot of Chinese people. They're great people, and many of them great Americans, because they see what communism has done. But this all started under Chairman Mao, and it started with the Great Leap Forward and all that. Frank, what has Mao done to China, an otherwise phenomenal country?
Well, China under Mao experienced genocide on an epic scale. By some estimates, the Chinese Communist Party has, throughout its life, murdered something like 100 million of its own people. And it began with Mao, as you say, Kevin, and he weaponized various whole of society techniques against, first and foremost, the Chinese Communist Party, and he's gone on to, and his successors, of course, to try to use it as well against other nations. The cumulative effect of the damage that Mao did has only been overcome by something you alluded to, and I know you will be getting into in detail with Peter Schweitzer, and that is the help that the Chinese, through their actual hide and bide strategy, as Deng Xiaoping called it, have gotten us to help them overcome the inherent inefficiencies as well as dysfunctionality of communism, with underwriting mostly from Americans' pension funds and other savings vectored there by Wall Street. This is where the yellow comes in big time and has enabled tremendously the threat that we face from the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, you gave an important, you said hide and bide, and I remember when I was coming out of college, China was terrible, they were a communist nation, and then when I got into the workforce in the 1990s, all of a sudden, they're our best friend, they're our best ally, they're loaning us money and they're buying our treasury bonds. They never intended to be capitalists, and I think that's a point that we need to cover when we come back from the break. China has always been, under Mao and since, communist with intention of ruling the world. We'll be right back with Frank Gaffney.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty, invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Gold holds its value far better than the US dollar. Let's see what happens when I go in this sweet shop and pay with gold. Can I pay with gold?
I mean, you can wait, find out how much it costs.
Do you know what? Basically, do you know why I'm even using gold?
I do not.
It holds its value over time, but it's a bit difficult to spend, isn't it? Do you take this?
Yes.
That's MasterCard. Yeah, but I'm actually going to pay with gold, believe it or not. Using this. That's my MasterCard, and it's linked to my gold wallet. So let's just watch that. Authorizing. Yeah, add a tip.
Thank you.
So this is your store?
Yes, sir.
And how much gold did I pay?
0.2243 grams.
Yeah, success. Bought with gold, paid with glitz.
China is an existential threat to the liberty in the United States. They have intention not just of hollowing out our industries, but they actually have intention, believe it or not, of entering America and subjugating us even with invasion. And they wanted to do it. Frank, there's this famous speech. It's famous only because of people like Jeff Nyquist and Epoch Times that have brought it out. It was a hidden secret speech talking about some of the things that we've seen happen. And this happened the speech is 21 years old, I think. Can you tell us about that secret speech?
Yeah, it was given at the time of, I think, roughly the 2003 period, if I'm not mistaken, by the guy who was at the time the defense minister of China, General, I'm going to mangle his name, I'm sure, it's something like Chi Hao-chen. And he gave this address to some secret conclave of Chinese leadership, I believe. And he made a number of revelations, Kevin, that were just shocking, really. Among other things, he said that there's going to be a lot of talk about Taiwan, but the United States is the main enemy. He talked about how Deng Xiaoping, Xi Jinping's predecessor, had laid out this strategy for destroying the United States, and that was its express purpose. And what he did was he described in particular something that, Kevin, amazingly is actually in the Unrestricted Warfare book as one of the desirable lines of attack, namely biological warfare. And he said that Deng had given the Chinese People's Liberation Army's illegal, by the way, biological warfare program, express orders to prepare to take down the United States, to depopulate it so that it could be colonized by China. Now, that's a pretty astonishing statement, and yet it has been studiously ignored, despite the fact that this speech has been, as you say, thanks in part to Jeff Nyquist and Epoch Times, I think, in circulation in the West, including in high levels of our government, for, at least a decade, I believe, maybe longer.
Yeah, no, and it's got a quote in here. It's indeed brutal to kill 1 or 200 million Americans, but that's the only path that will secure a Chinese century in which the CCP leads the world. That's the intention. A biological weapon, did it escape from a lab? I don't know if it escaped or it was released, but it was certainly created for a purpose of depopulating America. And then we have open borders. What happened with the open borders?
Before you leave that, could I just say one other thing? We did a Team B exercise, as we call them, a second opinion, really, on the, at the time, announced position of the CIA that they just couldn't figure out what this was. What we concluded, I think, very persuasively, Kevin, was whether it got out of the lab by accident, whether it got out of Wuhan by design. Once it was out, the Chinese Communist Party deliberately ensured that it would get to the United States and elsewhere in the world, killing, tens of millions of people in the process. So that's an example of the unrestricted warfare of a very deadly kind indeed.
And then that leads to a very upended election. I'll just use that term for 2020. Joe Biden, who was clearly not capable or competent to be president, becomes president. And then we have these massive open borders. And the Chinese then do what?
Well, let me just back the lens up just 1 second. Our colleague Sam Faddis, an undercover operative for some 20 years of the Central Intelligence Agency, used to say that using the terminology of his trade, that is to say, espionage, Joe Biden would be described as, quote, a controlled asset of the Chinese Communist Party, unquote. So you have to understand that one of the things that Joe Biden did that furthered the interests of the Chinese Communist Party dramatically was opening the borders. But it was just one of the things that he did because he was being told what to do. And, even if he was not the most sentient of men, his son Hunter Biden was in on the game, and I believe others in his administration were as well. This is the thing that worries me most, honestly, about what the Chinese have done. And again, it's the CCP, it's the Chinese Communist Party, it's not the people of China. But the Chinese took advantage of that open border to place in our country, by some estimates, as many as 200,000 Chinese soldiers, many of them believed to be special operators at that. And Kevin, I am fond of saying, I know you're going to be talking with Peter McElveen about the green piece of this, the Sharia exercise. These guys make what happened to us at the hands of 19 amateurs a threat incalculably greater. I mean, it's orders of magnitude more people, for one thing, but it's also trained professionals whose mission will be to destroy this country once they get the go code.
Well, Peter Schweizer's book is about how the Chinese have sent in, whether they take us down by a military conflict or, I've been watching the interviews, I can't wait to interview him in a couple of weeks, there'll be a voting bloc, and they're taking advantage of birthright citizenship. So billionaires are coming over here and having all kinds of babies that are American citizens. They're doing everything they can to subvert us. It's like Islam, by our own hands. Chinese are manipulating our system, compromising our politicians, and using all of that to literally hollow out America, including remove Americans from America so that they can occupy this as a territory. They already have police stations operating here, right?
They are reported to have a number of them, yes. One or two, I think, have been closed down, but I think there are others still operating. And by the way, Kevin, speaking of biological warfare, we found one biological weapons laboratory in Reedley, California. The Select Committee of the House of Representatives on the Chinese Communist Party opined there are almost certainly more of them, as well as these so-called overseas police service centers. And the mission of the service centers, Kevin, as you know, is to discipline the Chinese nationals in the United States, make them do the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party, which they are required to do by law, and further that cause of colonizing this country so that it is no longer an impediment to Chinese Communist Party world rule.
All right, I want to grab what you just said. They are required to by law. I want to carry that over to the next segment and talk about the Chinese infiltration into America. We'll be right back.
Oh, hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo, and I'm here to tell you about coffee. Well, not really, but I'm going to use coffee to illustrate my point. Here we have several different coffees, each with its own unique characteristics. First, we have instant coffee. This coffee pretends to be coffee, but it's not really coffee at all. It's a fraud. Plus, it tastes terrible. I'm out. Next, we have woke coffee. Their coffee actually tastes pretty good, until you find out that when you drink it, you have to admit that you've oppressed other coffees in the past. Insanity. I'm out. Next, we have Big Tech Coffee. Now, these guys used to encourage folks to share with others what they thought about their coffee. But now, if you say you don't like Big Tech Coffee, they'll take away your coffee pot. I'm out. This brings us to Patriot Mobile Coffee, right? This is one big cup of truth and freedom. There's no fraud here. Patriot Mobile is America's real Christian conservative wireless provider. Patriot Mobile gives back millions of dollars every year to organizations that are on the front lines fighting for our freedoms. Patriot Mobile offers the best nationwide 4G and 5G coverage on the same networks as the other major carriers. So you'll get the same great coverage, along with 100% US-based customer support, while knowing you are supporting a company that shares your conservative values. Switch to Patriot Mobile today by visiting patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
I'm outside Babe's, which I'm told is the quintessential chicken restaurant here in Roanoke, Texas. Let's go and see if we can buy the food in here, chicken with gold.
It's gonna be the fried chicken.
This is unbelievable. How am I going to fit all this in? I seriously actually don't know how to begin with this. This is so overwhelming.
They're with you.
Do you think I can pay with gold?
I don't know. You may have to ask the cashier. I don't handle it.
Can I pay with gold? But actually, you said I could pay with this? Okay, I'm gonna pay with this, but I'm gonna pay with gold. So look at the price of gold going up. That's pretty cool, yeah? Right, this is babes, yeah? How much gold did I pay? Gold, how many grams?
0.26.
0.26, quarter of a gram of gold. How about that?
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, yeah. Success! Bought with gold, paid with glint.
All right, we're talking with the great Frank Gaffney. We're talking about communist China and the threat to America. In fact, Frank was instrumental in creating the Committee on the Present Danger China. You can learn more at presentdangerchina.org. But Frank, what you just described before the break is that communists have figured out that there are a lot of Chinese people around the world, but they found a way to control them. And this reminds me of another area of your interest that I'll cover next week with Peter McIlvaine, which is the Hijra. You know, you send people out around the world and then you control them. They have to conform to authoritative Islam or we will kill you. The communists have figured out something like this. How does that work where they have a law in China and they're controlling Americans, people living here?
Well, it's not just that there are a lot of Chinese around the world. There have been a lot of Chinese sent around the world by the Chinese Communist Party, and I think a fair number of them are party members or children of party members, other people that they know will be loyal. And if they're not, they will be induced to be loyal, because we were talking in the last segment about these overseas Chinese police service centers. One of the things that apparently they do is they bring Chinese nationals, students, businessmen, anybody else that they want to have under their thumb, into one of these service centers, as they call them, and on a video screen, in what would be pretty transparently an unpleasant situation, in custody of some kind in China, is a family member. And the message is not lost that you will do what you're told to do or bad things will happen to your family. And that's one of the techniques. There are others. But overarching it all, Kevin, is the Chinese have created statutes, a national security statute, an intelligence statute, and the like, that assure that every Chinese national understands they have a duty to serve the motherland in whatever way the Chinese Communist Party dictates. And they assuredly will do so. I mean, there will be exceptions, I'm sure, but by and large, what you will find, I think, is the cohort that is in place inside the United States, even before you get to the military personnel of these students. There's some 300,000 of them, untold numbers of businessmen and researchers and tourists and the like, can be counted upon to serve the Chinese Communist Party, the motherland as they call it, to whatever ends they seek. And that ultimately, I think, unavoidably comes down to the one we've been talking about from the beginning, and that is destroying the United States of America.
Now, this sounds so much like the Green Horse. I mean, it's crazy because by our own miserable hands, sabotaging us from within and all of that. They've infiltrated Hollywood. They've infiltrated Wall Street. I mean, Frank, yes, that's something you and I have worked on at length with Roger Robinson and other colleagues, is how do we stop funding the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating here? I mean, Nixon went to China and literally started this, and Clinton, of course, with pushing the most favored nation and receiving money from Charlie Tree, and they've infiltrated, they've done all of these things. It is really, truly a red, green, blue axis, and I add the yellow for the traitors and cowards.
You have to.
So let's talk about the solutions for this. You've got the Committee on the Present Danger China, which has done incredible work stopping some of the Wall Street nonsense, defunding some of this, getting the president actually to sign executive orders on this. But you're now leading the Institute for the American Future. Describe that and how people can follow you and where they can donate to help you continue educating Americans.
Kevin, thank you so much. One of the things that I believed very strongly when I left the Reagan Pentagon was there needed to be a way to help good people in government with good people outside, collaborating in an efficient way. We've come up with a term, I think you mentioned it in your introduction, the special forces in the war of ideas. People that could be mobilized and brought to bear to help either on the inside game of the policymaking side, if you will, or on developing support for the good people doing good policymaking inside the government on the outside. This model has, I think, been proven to be very effective as well as very cost effective. We do it at usfuture.org. People can learn about the 5 coalitions that we sponsor. This one, the Committee on the Present Danger, China. You mentioned the Sovereignty Coalition, of which I'm one of the co-founders with Reggie Littlejohn. The very important one, the Victory Coalition, that works on the piece that Peter McElvain and you will be talking about shortly, the need for decisive victory over the Sharia supremacists, as I call them. An effort to just make America's military great again by supporting the work that the President and Pete Hegseth have been doing in the Department of War to overcome the Chinese Communist Party's cultural Marxist assault on our military during the Biden-Harris administration, as well as to make sure we have a missile defense, we have a nuclear deterrent that is credible. We get the woke stuff out of it, of course, but we also rebuild our military to deal with the present danger of the Chinese military especially. And then finally, Kevin, something that I know is on your heart as it is on mine, which is sort of the overarching war in which we find ourselves, the spiritual war, where good and evil are now very much joined in battle. And we do that under the banner of that very, very, I think, impactful effort now led by my colleague and friend Dee Dee Laugesen called Save the Persecuted Christians. You can find out about all of these in one place, usfuture.org, or you can go into the respective websites of each. Great resources at all of them, and I encourage you all to hit the donate button at usfuture.org if you would, to sponsor both those coalitions and the work they do, as well as the television program you were kind enough to mention earlier that we do at Real America's Voice, Securing America.
Yeah, no, and I want to encourage you, absolutely. Frank Gaffney's been a friend of mine for a long time. I've watched him up close and personal. I've seen him, in the best of times and the worst of times, and he's always been true to America. And you have an opportunity here to support all of that without a big building in Washington with massive overhead and massive employees. Every dollar that you put to work at Frank's usfuture.org goes immediately into the fight to preserve Western civilization, specifically the American part of Western civilization. So it is an absolutely worthy cause indeed. Frank joins us on all of our 4 horsemen. He plays a role in all of that. All right, we're going to summarize all this in our free economic battle plan. You can get a copy of it at economicwarroom.com. And I say this all the time, but remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space, and that's no more true anywhere else than it is with the Chinese Communist Party. It's Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.